Thank you very much, Baron Badger. I've just said all of that and absolutely no sound, so that's great. So I'll just repeat myself again. Hello and welcome to everyone. My name is Alex Isles, and this is my monthly stream and historical chat. So we just catch up on the month's videos that I've put out on my YouTube channel, and alongside this as well, we also talk about historical things as well and just see how that goes. So, as always, I'm just looking forward to people arriving. There was a 3 minute delay on last month's chat, so I hope it's not a 3 minute delay this month and you'll get to enjoy it. And if you wondered why I was waving a glass around earlier, the reason why is because every month I have a different drink. I had tea last month in a tankard, and this month I have got red wine, so really enjoying that. And again, apologies to both Tika and Baron Badger for the fact that I had no audio there. The other thing I would also like to mention is that unfortunately last month I did actually have COVID for a while. And so because I had COVID for a while, I have a little bit of a cough that's left over. So at any point I will probably just mute myself for a second and then you won't have to be exposed to that as well. So I really hope you're all doing well, and I'll start in a minute or two a summary of the videos that I had in the last month. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'm looking forward to chatting to you soon. No dramas. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's always annoying when you have a wee technical difficulty, isn't it? Because suddenly you're chatting away, and I'd actually muted myself because just before I started, I was eating a slice of chocolate cake. So as I was eating a slice of chocolate cake, I didn't want you all to hear me like finishing that off and have that as your main audio, which would be well, just annoying, wouldn't it? So I got rid of that just to make sure it'd be more pleasant. So we'll go from there. Brilliant. So I'm just pulling up the information. So yes, this month I've been going through my Roman videos, and it's basically been covering a lot of the information I filmed in February and March on Hadrian's Wall. Because as you've probably, if you subscribe to the channel, or if you've been watching regularly, you'll see that I did a walk of Hadrian's Wall dressed in Roman gear, which is being released every Wednesday, and I've got that's in 360 as well. So if you're watching on your mobile phone, you can move around the room and you can see all of that. And if you're watching on your computer, you can click and drag and you can see Hadrian's Wall as you walk along with me as I'm dressed as a second century Roman auxiliary. Alongside this as well, I then followed up a couple of weeks later by traveling to a number of sites along Hadrian's Wall, and I did some filming there. So we've gone through Mara, Alabava, and then alongside that as well, we then took a wee break, pardon me, sorry, to do the Easter video, which I think went relatively well. There was a lot more like reactions to it on Facebook than there was when I did it on YouTube. And then after that, we've just been going through, and I'm currently just earlier on today, I released the Bird Oswald Museum one. So Bird Oswald Museum went out earlier. And then I'm looking forward to Monday, where I've got my guided tour of Housestead's Roman Fort, which I'm hoping is going to go down well. Ah, yeah. Well, if you've got any questions, there's a few good Facebook pages. So one of the really good Facebook pages for walking Hadrian's Wall. Second, I'll find it so you have the information there. So it doesn't, by the way, seem to be a long delay, unless if you could tell me if there is a longer delay, please say. Um, okay. 1 second. Just realized. Um, there we go. That's the Facebook page right there. for the Hadrian's Wall walk. So if you ask any questions in there, that can then give you some information, and it's just a very useful sort of page for people looking to walk the wall. But alongside that, if you've got any historical questions or anything like that, I'm more than happy to answer those as well. But that's just a good thing there. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a particularly bad delay this time, which I'm really glad about. But yeah, so I've been going through that. The ones on Monday and on Friday this week, I've got a guided walking tour of Housestead's Roman Fort, which is about 20 minutes long. And then alongside that as well, I've also got a guided walking tour on coming out on Friday of Vindolanda Roman Fort, both of which, oh no, an interview at Vindolanda Roman Fort, both of which I'm really quite excited to release. I think they're going to be really good fun because people will really be able to like see housesteads, which unless you sort of like live around Hadrian's Wall and you're coming out here regularly, it's a wee bit harder to do. But yeah, what have people's thoughts been on the videos so far? Have you enjoyed them? Um, it's been interesting. I've been talking to some other YouTubers, Irish Medieval History, Philip, and I also get along with Michael, who does Clans and Dynasties. Um, One sec. Did you get my pagans comment? Did you get many pagans commenting on your Easter video? No, but on Facebook, I Bloomenwell did. Got lots of upset on Facebook because I post in like 20 odd groups for if it's not Roman. With Roman, there's quite a few more pages for Roman stuff, but there was quite a few people who said I was wrong, and it always goes in circles, and I thought it would pick up a lot more, but it just depends. It didn't do as well as the Christmas video. Christmas video did a lot better, but it basically is the same thing of we don't know enough. There's not enough sources, there's not enough information, but you just run with it. Um, but when I've been talking to Michael at Clans and Dynasties and Philip at Medieval Irish History, we think that the algorithms currently slightly different at YouTube, and they're really favoring shorts. But I haven't had a chance to film any yet, so maybe when I get a chance, there'll be more shorts on the channel, but I just struggle to put them out. So we'll just see how that goes. But I hope people are still enjoying the content no matter what. But I've noticed there's a lot less people seeing the videos than there were before. We'll just see how it goes. But I've been like the tail end of the month is when the best content's going to come out. And then so just yesterday, this is quite funny because I don't know if you, on the community tab on Facebook, I posted about filming a load of Anglo-Saxon content, and I was really enjoying it. I was filming on, the Northumbrian kings, on early Northumbria, all of that sort of stuff, but the audio got corrupted. And so I had to scrap 6 videos just like that, boom, gone, which was really, really frustrating. Because suddenly it's like you put quite a lot of time into it, quite a lot of effort. You try and research something and it just doesn't work out as you want it to. So because of that, short to medium length video is better. Cool, that's useful to know. Would you be able to quantify what you mean by short to medium length? Because then that helps me just understand. But we'll just also again see how that works out. Where was I? Yes. But yeah, I filmed the Anglo-Saxon videos, and when I filmed the Anglo-Saxon videos, audio was corrupted, and when the audio was corrupted, I've now had to refilm them. So I filmed 4 yesterday, and tomorrow I'm hoping to film 4, 5, 6 more. And when I get those filmed, that's going to be really, really good to actually sort of see how people respond to that. Trying to do a slightly different style to how I would normally do things. Try and be a bit more tour guidey, and then just see how that goes from there. But the Anglo-Saxon stuff I'm really quite excited about. But yeah, it's quite busy at the minute because I'm getting a load of requests for tour bookings for people wanting to do stuff like that. Yeah, videos longer than 30 minutes. I agree as well. Good news, there isn't any that are like 30 minutes long. I think the only one that coming up is the Housestead's Guided Walk, which is 30 minutes long, but it's a 360-degree video. And I've literally just written, just like sit yourself down, get yourself a hot drink or a cold drink or a beer, and get ready and really sit down, because it's a bit more of a intense video, but like it's a full guided tour of a fort. So I hope some people will enjoy that. But most of the content I'm trying to keep about 15, well, 8 to 15 minutes is where I'm trying to keep it at. Some are longer, some are up to 20 minutes, but I'm just seeing what works, because some people might want to watch a bit and then come back, but I'm just trying out new stuff as well. It's all about trying and trialing stuff at YouTube as well. Because one of the things that when I've been talking to both the clans and dynasties and Irish medieval history, when we've been sitting down and chatting, a big thing about it is looking at the fact that we want audiences to really sort of engage with the content we're making. But it's a sort of an uphill battle with YouTube at the minute, but we'll get there, slow and steady. Um, but good fun. Mm, mm. So yeah, just developing more content. Hope to do some stuff on the Anglo-Scottish borders in the future and just work from there. But the Anglo-Saxon stuff is really good fun to research, because I've been able to go over some books that I have really, really enjoyed in recent history. What's your plans referring to the Anglo-Saxon videos? So the plans for the Anglo-Saxon videos is basically to do a lot on the Anglo-Saxon kings of Northumbria. So I'm going to start off with Ida, who is in 547 AD, and I'm going to go through to the last of his dynasty, the Idings, and into the early period of the Viking invasions. So it's basically there's a period of the great Northumbrian kings, and then you have a period of instability and civil war, and then you have the Viking invasions. And I might do some stuff about Viking Northumbria as well, going up to from 866, 867, which is when you traditionally have the Anglo-Saxon so the Viking invasions, right the way through till probably 1066. I might do as a second lump with a bit of a focus on the Reeves or the Earls of Bamborough, and basically how they control North Northumbria, the area that was traditionally known as Bernicia, even past the Scandinavian invasion of what we today would call Yorkshire and the kingdom of the Viking kingdom of Jorvik. So those are the sort of things that I will want to be looking at and developing, as well as reading up on the Border Reivers, some of the Anglo-Scottish wars. But I'm just going to try and build stuff as I go, and I really want to get out in the field again soon with the camera, get out filming again, really just have some fun getting out and doing that, because that's some of the stuff that I really enjoy, is walking around, showing people the sights, showing people the information, filming with my camera. It's just very engaging stuff, and it's good fun for me too, because it feels like I'm doing a guided tour for you. So that's the plan. I'd really like to do that. Harder with some of the stuff, because Anglo-Saxons traditionally, I could do a few Anglo-Saxon churches, but their halls and stuff were wooden, so they rotted away. And so it's harder if you take you to an Anglo-Saxon hall, you're just looking at it. But I'm trying to be in chats with a site called Jarrah Hall, and Jarrah Hall has a fantastic um, um, sorry, Jarrah Hall has a fantastic reconstruction of a hall from a place called Furlings, which isn't far from Ad Gefren. So if you've watched the Ad Gefren series, there is some good some sort of stuff there where I could do some filming at, at Jarrah Hall. But again, I'm basically talking to them to try and get that filming happening, but we'll get there eventually. It's a little bit of a waiting game. I'm not entirely sure when they're going to say yes. So that's all of the plan. Break it up to early Northumbria, Viking invasion and Scandinavian rule, Might want to pop down to York and do some stuff there. And then in the later period, I want to look at up into the Norman invasion and the effects of the Norman invasion as well. But it's just planning the episodes, planning the series. The content I'm doing now in the Northumbrian Kings is really good fun because it's like kings who I read about regularly. So, for instance, this is one of my source books, The King in the North by Max Adams. Fantastic book right there. I'm also using this is an older book, but the Northumbrian Saga by John Marsden. Again, a really good one looking at the Iding dynasty. And then alongside that as well, a new book by the Bambra Bones Project, Accessing Aden. Fantastic book, has some really cool stuff on the kings of Northumbria and also what Bambra would have looked like in the Anglo-Saxon period. So Bambra Castle. So don't know how clear that is. Yeah, there you go. That's just amazing for me because today Bambra, there's a massive Norman castle in the middle there where you have the halls, but that is a possible interpretation as to what it looked like. And then the other one I'm using as well, which is by an amazing, amazing historian, N.J. Hyam, the Northumbria. So some of these are a little bit older, but the content inside them is just fantastic. And so using them as research material, you get some really, really good content out of it, really nice videos. And also like looking at stuff. So like one of the things I've really enjoyed is that there's a king called Aelfrith, who is known as the Twister or the Flexer. And Aelfrith, his children would like, so Oswald, Oswiu were the kings of Northumbria. But he has a brother who, sorry, no, there's Ida, warlord of Northumbria, and Ida, his children, he has a descendant who goes up into Pictland, and there are some of his kings, some of his children who become kings of Pictland. And then alongside that as well, there's just basically showing that the Northumbrian Anglo-Saxons were actually intermarried into both the British, the Pictish, and the Scottish dynasties. So it's really cool to see all of that influence where it's not just Anglo-Saxon versus Britain and Irish, but there's all sorts of politics and intermarrying going on, and they're all related to each other. Older books often better? Yeah, there are, but there's also really good stuff in modern archaeology. So, like modern archaeology is where I get a real passion because of the fact that we can look at some of the sources. So, like for instance, Bede, he is often historians today have a go at Bede, but I'm just like, well, what sources did he have to work with? He didn't have any other knowledge. Whereas we today can do archaeology, we can assess things, we can carbon date things, isotopes, DNA, and we can build a much more altogether interesting picture. So that's some of the stuff there. In my calendar as well, I'm going to be hopefully going down to the Eboracum Festival in York, which is the Roman festival. And I hope to be down, so that's the 25th and 26th of June. I hope to be down in York for that. And then alongside that as well, I hope to be at Segedunum, which is a Roman fort in Newcastle. In North Tyneside, apologies to any North Tynesiders, on the 20th and 21st of August. And then finally, I'll be going to the Netherlands in the the first week of August. I'll be jumping across into the Netherlands, and hopefully these are all reenactment events. So it's Roman events that I'll be going along to and with fellow historians. So that's something I'm really quite excited and passionate about. But yeah, trying to fill up the calendar, getting a lot of requests for Hadrian's Wall, Bambra and Lindisfarne, taking people out all over the region and really getting to show off. And I'm trying to write new tours as well. So I'm trying to write a prehistoric Northumbria tour based off a lot of the sites around the region where you've got like ancient stone circles, rock art, all of that sort of stuff, as well as trying to like research stuff on more modern stuff like castles, English-Scottish wars, Bishop of Durham's, all of that stuff. Because I just want to have some new tours to go out and about with. Always good fun. Do we know the Northumbrian kingdom was created? The post-Roman period is sadly scant for evidence. So this is what my first video is about, and I'm really happy to talk about this on the live stream. But Northumbria is created under Ealhfrith. So Ealhfrith is generally dated between 593 and 616. That's his dates. And he creates Northumbria by uniting the kingdom of Deria, which is what we'd call North and East Yorkshire today, with the kingdom of Bernicia, which is North Northumberland, and they form them together as a single kingdom. Is there many boroughs boroughs? When you say boroughs, do you mean barrows, as in like long barrows, as in Bronze Age, or no, it's a Neolithic barrows? Or are you referring to another monument, as in the Dark Age barrows? I don't know of many Anglo-Saxon barrows, as in because the Anglo-Saxons did have a habit of burying into pre-existing Neolithic and Bronze Age monuments. When you're looking at those, I think there was one possibly that was ploughed flat in near Alnwick and produced a pattern welded sword as well as some gold fittings for a shield, which would suggest a late 5th, early 6th century burial of a Germanic warrior. So that was near Alnwick. Other than that, don't know of many barrow sites because it seems the Anglo-Saxons up here in the northeast seem to have buried into previous Roman remains, at least initially. Because this is the thing in my first video. It's like, where did the Northumbrians come from? So there's 3 different theories. The traditional first theory is, yeah, I know there's the Saxon usage in the south is there, but I wonder if it's because they are pre-existing. There's possibly some barrows near Bamborough, but I don't think they've ever been investigated, and they may never have even been investigated, I think, by Victorians, which is a good thing, because Victorian archaeology is brutal. But I need to look into that a wee bit more because it's something that I'm not as knowledgeable about. But I don't know of many barrow burials in the northeast. It's something that maybe needs to be investigated a bit more. But could be that they just didn't do it as well wide because I don't know of as many barrows up here. Long barrows, there's a couple, but there seems to be more sort of Bronze Age burial cairns rather than like which are stone piles rather than earth mounds, which I think are generally Neolithic if I'm correct. But please don't quote me on that. I need to learn a bit more. But yeah, the Northumbrians, the first traditional one is the one where the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes come in the 5th century. They come into Britain, and it's all started off by the British, what's it called, dictator, tyrant as he's described, Vortigern. And Vortigern then doesn't pay Hengist and Horsa. Hengist and Horsa revolt, and then there's a war. And then after the war, they invite in their relations and they take over. So it's then suggested that possibly the Northumbrians were cousins or relations to Hengist and Horsa. There's one Anglo-Saxon chronicle that suggests that Eosa, which is the father of Ida, was a cousin possibly of Hengist and Horsa, and then he goes up to the north and then goes from there. Following on from that, there is the Benic theory. The Benic theory, Benish theory, and this is the British name for Benicia. Now, when you have the Benic theory, what happens is that they believe the Tyne Valley, or the eastern half of Hadrian's Wall, was already very Germanic, and Hadrian's Wall was very Germanic. So the possibility is that those troops would invite over their family members, and that there was already an Anglo-Saxon community along the River Tyne. And they suggest places like Corbridge, Benwell, South Shields already have evidence for Anglo-Saxon settlement within that period. Then what happens is Ida is a young princeling who gathers a war band, and he goes up and takes Bamborough in 547. But there's also sort of like a 100-year gap because we know in the 450s we see Anglo-Saxon expansion down in the southeast in places like Kent, Sussex, East Anglia, Essex, all of those areas. The 450s, we've got Anglo-Saxon expansion. But Ida suddenly just explodes out of nowhere in 547, so it's nearly 100 years later. So we've got a 100-year gap where we're just like, what's going up and going on up at the wall region? What's going on around north of the wall? Is it the post-Roman kingdoms are actually just fighting amongst each other, and it's not seen as an Anglian versus British or Romano-British war? It's just like it's instead what something else is going on, or are the British kingdoms suitably Romanized that they just don't see a problem, or Germanized or something like that? It's a really interesting one, but we do know 547 is the date traditionally given for Ida taking Bamborough, and then when he takes Bamborough, the area around Bamborough Castle and all of that region starts becoming more and more what we'd call Anglo-Saxon. And from there, then four of Ida's sons follow him as kings of Northumbria. One of his sons, who is Theobald, is besieged on the island of Lindisfarne by four British kings, which I do a video about on my Bamborough series. But alongside that as well, with the Bamborough series, it's quite important to note that I say Ida was besieged. I made a mistake. It's Theobald. And then from there, Theobald is then succeeded by Ethelric, and then Ethelric is succeeded by Hussa, and then Hussa is succeeded by Ethelfrith, who is the son of Ethelfric. Got that right. And then Ethelfric is the one who basically fights a number of battles in and around the region that basically creates Northumbria by defeating a a Scotii and British alliance and other things like that. In and around the wall. Yeah, so around the wall, we know that there are Frisians. So we know there are Frisians at Rudchester. We know there are Frisians along at Housesteads. We know there are Frisians at Bird Oswald. And there were other Germanic troops as well, such as the Batavians, the Tungri. They were all settled along the wall. And in Newcastle, we also know there was a unit of so there was the Corvoni, which is the British tribe, but there is also the sorry, I'm going to have to double check this. I always generally remember this, but hmm, sorry, I can't find it, but it's a German unit who are quite close to the Tungri or the Batavians. They're a distant cousin. They are the. Oh, it'll come back to me in a moment. I do apologize. Um, just sometimes I just get a mental blank about the name of various different groups. Thank you for your patience. It'll come to me in one moment. The Cunganorum, yeah. Cunganorum who'd been granted citizenship by Emperor Trajan. So that's one of the ones there. So yeah, Cunganorum, Germanic tribe who were based and stationed around Newcastle upon Tyne. Roman Britain was not very Roman in its later phases. Um, yes and no. The thing is that people always expect the Romans to be, an Italic tribe, or they see them as that. But the Roman Empire was always changing, and the late Roman Empire is not the same as the early Roman Empire. So the thing is, the culture had shifted, the way the Romans did things, and the ethnic composition of the Roman Empire was just different, and they were still very Roman. Like the Roman troops would have seen themselves as Roman. The troops serving in the Roman army would have wanted to Romanize. They were culturally wanting to convert. And we can see from other sources, for instance, I know I'm plugging a load of his books, but they're just very good. If you hold on one moment, there's a book by Max Adams called The First Kingdom. And this book by Max Adams is fantastic. And the First Kingdom, he basically goes into the fact that that we see even into the 450s that there are Gaulish priests coming across into southern Britain to basically help deal with the Pelagian heresy. And when they're dealing with the Pelagian heresy, it's really, really interesting because it shows that there are still existing Roman towns functioning under the Roman system in the 450s. So it's like the Roman government or the centralized imperial authority collapsed, but people were still living in the Roman fashion. They were still doing things the Roman way. It's not that unbelievable, if that makes sense. It's a really interesting one right there. Mhm. But yeah, as I go back to university in September, my field where I really want to do some studying, and I'm doing a master's in archaeology, I really want to focus on the late Roman, so third century onwards, because I'm currently reading the archaeology report for Housestead's Roman fort, and it's so fascinating for me because it's like the fort gets rebuilt in the third century, it gets continued to be used. There seems to be a period of the fort is not used, and then suddenly it's reoccupied and used again by native roundhouses. So just absolutely fascinating stuff, really, really fascinating stuff going on there. And that period of history just really just makes me, just because there's no like real historical sources, as you mentioned before. Like we don't have historical sources, so we have to figure it all out. We have to sort of look at things and try and go, what's going on here? And that's what really gets me passionate. Really, really passionate. But yeah. Um, but do you have any other questions? Or I've noticed there's two other people watching. If you've got any other things on once lifestyles and sinning, late fourth century, yes. Third century, I'd say no. I'd I'd say that there was a high standard of Roman goods, high standard of Roman living. Third century is when we see the greatest extent of the Roman goods coming in, real investment, real heavy Romanization in the province, even in the period of civil war, when Roman Britain is on paper independent for about 20 odd years. Britain is actually an independent state outside of the empire from a usurper. So, very interesting one there. That actually, like at the height of when the usurpers are around, we also see high amounts of Roman material and some really interesting things going on. Just to say to the other three people who are watching, if you've got any questions as well, feel free to just put them in the chat. I don't know if you're just comfortable listening, but if you'd like to chat away, it's always great to be able to chat to you as well. Just to say, Baron Badger, that's nothing against chatting to you. I just think I just want to open up the floor. Other people might have questions about some of the stuff I'm doing or all of that sort of stuff, and just basically just chat away. Um, but yeah, I'm just trying to do as much as possible, really. I have to say, with the video creation, I've been finding it a little bit tougher lately. Um, Hello, UAP David. All good. Nice to meet you. Or is that Upper David? You're going to have to correct me on if I'm saying it in one way or another. If it's Upper or UAP David, whatever works. But welcome to the party. Who's my favorite Roman emperor? Oof. This is always a difficult question. I think I touched on this last live stream. I think they're all horrendous, as in like they're all tyrants who, killed people without mercy and were all pretty brutal. Um, Emperor Septimius, sorry, not Septimius Severus, sorry. Marcus Aurelius always comes out pretty good. Oh, hello, Babajun. Great to have you in the chat as well. Always lovely to see you too. I always think they come out as pretty horrendous. All of them come out as pretty horrendous. They're tyrants, they're murderers, they're all pretty bad. So, Marcus Aurelius, because of his philosophical ideas and the simple fact the poor guy basically became emperor and then the whole Rhineland exploded into war, is UAP like UFO. Cool. um, Exploded into war and just basically caused like the whole Roman Empire to have to fight this horrendous war for like 15, 16 odd years. That's pretty rough. And I think Marcus Aurelius may have been a different emperor if that hadn't been there. I kind of like Antonius Pius. Um, as in like the Antonine War, the guy built that, just because he just seems to be a really chilled out guy. Whereas the rest of the emperors, like they're all wanting to start wars or they're trying to like be brutal or stuff like that or expand the empire. He just really wants to just live through his life and just be emperor. And so he just is a middle of the road guy. I kind of like the ones who just let their people understand. Calls Marcus a butcher. Merrybeard can be a little bit controversial. He is a warrior emperor, definitely a military emperor in every way, shape, and form. I mean, like, he's better than the Septimians. The Septimians are freaking insane and freaking ferocious. I kind of love them for it because they're so horrible. I mean, like Caracalla, I love him because he's just like he murders his own brother. I mean, he's so freaking horrible, but then like he's such a weird character as well because he's just so forceful and all that sort of stuff as well. Really weird sort of guy. I'm trying to think of other emperors. Valentinian, kind of respect Valentinian a lot for hard political choices. Um, it's a hard one. The thing is, for me, emperors don't matter as much. Um, in some ways, um, than I see my focus of studies. I love to know how people lived. I love to know how people were existing and interacting, and lived within the times. Like I'd love to know. I love looking at the native British point of view as well, and how they interacted with the Romans. So sometimes, like other people get really focused, pardon me, on particular emperors, but when you're looking at normal day-to-day life, most people would never have been bothered by the emperors as such. They would basically just be like, oh well, there's a new emperor. Does that mean much? Or some of the coins are going to change their faces, but other than that, does it make a difference to my life? Other than if the emperor decides to do something crazy like declare a war or, like make a new law or something like that, most people wouldn't be bothered too much. Um, but yeah, I kind of like them. Generally, in my opinion, whenever an emperor, it's the emperors who create the most stability. That's the ones that I like the most because I feel sorry for the other people. I'm glad you're enjoying the walk along the wall. There's a few more episodes. I think as such it goes as far as August, and then I'll need to think of something else that'll have to go on the Wednesdays. But it's just a selection of my walks along the wall. I did have some stuff in Cumbria, but I deleted it because it's just on the first day I was having a horrible day, and it's just like an hour of me walking along looking like death and just really unhappy, and my face is just like. And I've got the furka, which is the wooden pole. I totally misjudged the size of the furka, got it totally wrong. It was really unpleasant, and I should not have used that. And yeah, that was unpleasant. Um, it was, but at the same time, the second, third, and fourth days went so well. Yeah. Oh, you have a 360 headset. That's class. Most people, I just presume, are watching on their mobile phones. If you do have that, that's even better because it's like it means you can interact with it so much more, and I think that's a lot of fun for people. Um, because I think there will be an area for 360 on Facebook once Facebook gets over this war with TikTok. Because I just think Facebook isn't supposed to be the same thing as TikTok, but they're trying their hardest to fight TikTok, and that's just unfortunate. But it's a phase. We'll come past it. Welcome to all the people who've joined in the meantime, by the way. It's nice to have you with us. But yeah, um, some sections are harder than others. I really enjoyed it. I kept wanting to talk to the camera, but I thought, well, actually, most people want to be watching this as a sort of like just taking in the surroundings. So me just nattering away wouldn't be good. I kept wanting to do the sort of the Frodo and Sam. Oh, we're a long way from the Shire now, Mr. Frodo, or something like that. But I restrained myself. Um, well, actually, coming up on the 360 Housesteads tour, um, Chung- hi Chungus Khan. The vids are great. Boy, what a view. Thank you. You're welcome. You know what, Chungus Khan? I think you'll really enjoy the Housesteads 360 that's going to come out on Monday. It was a real good fun putting it together. And actually, at one point, I was chatting. I was just between sections where I was talking. I found myself humming, and I didn't realize till I edited the videos afterwards that I'd been humming the Jurassic Park theme tune. It's hilarious. And so I sent it to one of my friends as a sort of like, could you watch over this and just tell me what you think? And he was just like, oh, I love the humming. I watched it back again and I realized I was just like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I just didn't even realize I was doing it, but it was just like between sections of information. As I walked between sites, I just did it. But I'm thinking of doing some more stuff like that in different historical kit over time. Obviously, I have to save up. So what I do is I normally take stuff like my tip money or stuff like that, and then I buy stuff for the hobby. But I would love to do some third century stuff, maybe at Segadunum, or some late Roman stuff when I'm across in the Netherlands, and then I'll put that up on the channel too. But I don't want it to be too much Roman at the minute. I'm really enjoying the Anglo-Saxon stuff because I'm a wee bit I, myself, I'm a wee bit sick of the Roman stuff, the Roman videos. I love it, but I just want to take a break for a wee bit so I can do some other content because I don't want the channel just to be known for Roman stuff. Um, I want to, in the future, I'd love to get back to doing some prehistoric stuff, but just mix it around and just do it all about history. And then I'll jump across the Scottish border and do some stuff in Scotland, do some stuff in Cumbria, some in Yorkshire, and just really just spread out the history and just do that as I develop. But there's so much history that I'm not going to run out anytime soon. It's going to be really, really good fun. I hope you don't mind. If you please don't all log off, um, but please chat amongst yourself. I'm going to be about 2 minutes. I just need to have a wee comfort break and I'll be right back, okay? So just hold on for a wee bit and I'll be right back. There we go, I'm back. This is why we follow you. This channel is so good we aren't even worthy. I don't know what that's in reference to. Is that to what I said about wanting to do more stuff around the region, or was it in reference to my toilet break? Just double checking. Always good to double check that, because obviously on the internet you can't tell jokes or irony. But if you're being serious, thank you so much. It's really good fun. In fact, actually, was doing a tour today actually, and I had a group of what was it? They were lovely actually, Californians, four Californians, and I did a half-day tour of Hadrian's Wall. Really, really lovely people, and it was really unfortunate because the tour company they'd booked through. I told them to go to the wrong place, so they had to get a taxi to join me. And I thought it was going to be one of those tours, which was going to be a little bit sour, but in the end, it worked out so well. Give them a wee bit more of my time at the end, and it just worked out really nicely. And I actually had a really good time with them. And it's just that's the sort of thing as well. And I chucked in a wee bit of prehistoric as well, because there's we go to one museum called the Great North Museum. Showed them around the prehistoric section alongside the Roman section, and it was just real good fun for me. But that's the sort of thing as well. Just absolutely love sharing the history, basically. Cool. Do you have any questions about anything that's gone out recently, or like any particular bits of history or stuff like that? You said you wanted to do more prehistoric content. Whatever you want to do, I'm here for the content so far. It's great and the information is packed. Thank you, Chungus. So yeah, I think for me, I'd just like to focus a wee bit more. Maybe try and do a couple of stone circles, or maybe something like that. There's a really nice one in Cumbria called Castlerig, and I'd love to do a 360 video of Castlerig because it's just in the Lake District, and being there, you understand why they built it in that place. It's one of the most amazing stone circles. In the northeast, there are fewer stone circles. There are some um, four four post stone circles, and there are some other ones as well. The problem is that lots of them were broken into pieces to make fences or stone walls or stuff like that from about the sort of 18th century onwards. So a lot of them just don't exist anymore, which is a real shame. But there are some slightly better ones in Cumbria and harder to reach places. But I'd love to do some stone circles, maybe talk about the Bronze Age a wee bit more, talk about the Iron Age, stuff like that. I'm in talks with someone who does Celtic reenactment, and we might do some videos together. I just need to, he's got a lot of work on at the minute, and it'd be really fun to do some Celtic British stuff too. That would be lots of fun for me. Lots and lots of fun. Avebury. Avebury is the really special one. Avebury, everyone talks about Stonehenge. Stonehenge for me is boring. Sorry. Avebury, on the other hand, like that whole area is nuts because Avebury is huge. It's massive. It's way bigger than Stonehenge, and it's way more special. And then there was possibly a wooden henge nearby, and then there was the walkway. All of it comes together. It's a load of ritual stuff that ties in together. Are these stone circles related to the dolmens? Or are they burial markers? Or how do they relate to the stars and equinoxes? Sort of off topic, but the B&B aim Bushnooks advertises that they're close to Bad Oswald. Would you recommend? I've stayed at Bushnooks. Bushnooks is exceptional, and I've got a really good working relationship with them. They actually saved my life once. It's in another way. That's another story for another time. But I walked. I'll come back to the other questions in a second about Avebury and the stone circles, Chungus. Please don't. I put a pin in it. I'm just going to answer Babajun, and then Baron. I've seen your question as well. So if it disappears off the screen, I am actually just keeping in track. All right. So I walked Hadrian's Wall 10 years ago. This sort of this time of year, 10 years ago last month. And when I walked Hadrian's Wall, I walked it with a friend, and our accommodation fell through, and we were actually rescued by the people at Bushnooks, and we stayed there overnight. And the breakfast is exceptional. They're amazing, and I'd say that Bushnooks is fantastic. If you get a chance to go, they will look after you, and I could wax lyrical about them. They're brilliant business people and good friends. So I'd say that just for that sort of thing there. Going back to the stone circles, stone circles can never be taken on their own. They are always quite amazing because they're always connected together. So you never find one stone circle, but what you'll find is maybe you'll find a standing stone, then a stone circle, then another standing stone, maybe then another stone circle, and then it connects into a landscape. And for instance, when I was doing the video on Ad Gefren, the Millfield Valley has 10 has 10 henges lined up to take you through the whole valley. So like they're never on their own. They're always connected together to take you on a journey. And that's really interesting. So that's just takes you through, and it's always about a connection of things together. Now, in regards to the stars and equinoxes, Stonehenge appears to be lined up with the winter equinox, and it seems to be a place of the dead, because later on, after the Neolithic in the Bronze Age, you see a lot of people buried into Stonehenge. But that may be the Bronze Age population trying to claim the site, and so what the Bronze Age population did is they often buried into older Neolithic monuments. So, but it seems that that Stonehenge is connected to death, whereas Avebury is connected to like springtime and stuff like that. There's a load of interesting stuff. I may have misquoted Avebury's purpose, but it's got different purpose to Stonehenge, and they're all together as a connection of things in the countryside, which are quite amazing. In regards to how many hill forts are there in the northeast, the northeast has the sort of North Northumberland in Scotland has the highest density of hill forts in the British Isles. It's huge. But the difference is that whereas you see much larger hill forts in the south, in the southwest especially, so like Maiden's Castle down in the south, down on the in the south, and other places like that, our hill forts are really quite small. They're generally about a hectare or less in size. They're really quite small. But we have loads of them. Like Ingram Valley has 10 hill forts. I mean, it's mental how many hill forts there are in such a small area in the Breamish Valley. Just all of them in together. The largest one, the one that only counts as a hill fort historically, is Yevering Bell, just above Ad Gefren, which is huge. It's a massive hill fort with 150 housing platforms inside there. So maybe 150 roundhouses and two massive roundhouses, which are up to 30 meters in diameter. So you're looking at a massive hill fort there in North Northumberland, and it may be connected because from the top of Yevering Bell, you can actually see across to Tritonium, or where there was another hill fort at Melrose. So there's a connection there possibly, and it may be a part of the same tribe. But the number of hill forts in the northeast is massive. But they're very under excavated. One sec, I'll see if where is it? So there's these two books, which I had to find in PDF form and then print them. So there's this one, Hill Forts, where they discuss some of the ones that have been excavated. Fantastic resource. You can find it online for free. And it's just a hill fort heritage of Northumberland. Very good source for the hill forts. So if you're interested in hill forts, that's the one to look at. And then you've got Archaeology in Northumberland National Park by Paul Frodham. Again, these are not small papers. So if you are interested, those are the ones I would suggest for some of the prehistoric and hill fort heritage. Very good books. I've got my shelf right here, you see, so I can quickly pull stuff off and talk about it. And the next book I'm going to read, once I've finished Housesteads, is this one. So that will give me a light in the stone circles and all of that. When I look at how the tribes live compared to the Romans and the Greeks, it blows me away. Even the Minoan palaces thousands of years prior. Yeah, well, that's the sort of thing as well. Every culture is different. One of the biggest problems was the use of the word barbarian. So, like the Romans obviously believed that their culture was correct. Every culture believes their culture is correct. So, because of that, when they look at it, they're just like, well, these people, they're uncivilized. But a lot of the evidence suggests that the northern British tribes, what they would do, or central British and northern British, is in the summer they would live up on the hillside. And then in the winter, they'd come down into the valleys. There's evidence for that, or there's evidence for all sorts of stuff where they may have been a lot more migratory than people understand. So um, it's a very different one, and there's a big question about how they did conflict as well. Was it just champions, or was it full-scale conflict, or whatever? We don't know. And their material archaeology is very thin on the ground. It's really interesting. Compared to the Bronze Age and the Neolithic, we actually almost have more stuff for them than we do for the Iron Age. It's one of the areas where if I go and do more professional archaeology, I'd be really interested in doing some more hill fort archaeology and learning more about hill forts because they're so interesting for me. Like so cool. And to be able to find some textiles as well, because we have no textiles from that period. Really, really struggles for any cloth or material from that period. Have I covered all the questions that were asked? Um, Duddo in Northumberland. Yes, so I've actually filmed the Duddo stones, and I have them in 360 as well. I just haven't released them, but I haven't talked about them. I've got them as clips. So I'm really considering doing some stuff on Duddo because I love the area and I've visited it myself, and they're very interesting stones because the stones are really ancient, and it's really cool because it seems that when the Neolithic farmers first arrived, they built all of the stone circles, they built these monuments, and then as they got more into the landscape, they just didn't need really to build these monuments anymore. So they reduce in size, the rock art reduces, and then as we go into the Bronze Age, there's a sort of like an explosion of cairns and stuff like that. Um, and then they sort of die down again, and then we get a hill fort explosion around about the third century BC, and then the hill forts, sorry, around the well, about third century until about the first century, and then they get abandoned, and the hill forts get abandoned before the Romans even arrive, and then it's really quite cool. Textiles don't last well. Yeah, they really don't last well. It's really unfortunate how poorly textiles last. But we can learn from what we have, and there's always stuff going to be discovered in the future, which is fun. I find hill forts quite spiritual. I doubt there was a simple fortifications or dwellings. Well, the one thing about hill forts that you can see from the reports that I read is that not all of them are that well defended. As in, like they don't make necessarily sense if you wanted to defend them from a full-scale assault. A lot of them are actually do apologize. I'm sorry about that. A lot of them are very interesting. They're actually more along the lines of like I'm trying to explain. Some of them are about showing off the power of a particular family or group, rather than like a full-on military site. They're very interesting, and they are on high places. There is evidence to suggest. Pardon me, sorry. There is evidence to suggest that there were also low forts. So settlements that were on the lowland, but unfortunately, because of where they were, they've often been used as fields or ploughed over since. But there is evidence for low forts as well as hill forts. So that's a really interesting one there. Because maybe because of the fact that they are all on the hills, they haven't been farmed. They haven't been taken over in the same way as lowland areas. And so they've survived. And so it could be survivor's bias. They've happened to survive, so we know about them. But the lowland ones might just be as prevalent, and we just haven't noticed them as much. I don't know if they were storage for animal stock or grain, because when you look at the size of them, they're not as big as you'd expect for animal storage. And I think they're more like meeting places where you can meet with a tribal chieftain and then you go back to your homes. Did the Celtic Britons mesh and merge with the Anglo-Saxons, or were they chased off by them? As a Norse Gael American, I have a piss poor understanding of Anglo-Saxon and Brythonic history. Well, my personal belief is that they did merge. Now, we do know of one migration from the southwest of Britain into Gaulish Armorica, and Armorica comes Brittany, because so many Britons flee across that they rename it as Brittany. Now, the majority of people couldn't probably afford to flee. So if you look at modern day crises, it's the middle and upper classes who escape countries when there's violent persecution. And when they escape, they then settle in other countries and they form dysphoria in other countries. So I think that the wealthy Romano Britons managed to get out. Now, the normal people, what does it matter if your overlord changes from speaking Latin to a Germanic dialect? You learn the dialect, or they learn your dialect, and you mix in together, and you become a part of a new group of people. And when you become a part of a new group of people, it's this sort of amalgamation. And the thing is when I look at it, it's really interesting as well because we see that some of the early Anglo-Saxon kings, so like Ida of Northumbria, he seems to marry a British princess, or at least has a British consort. So I don't know if they were married, but he has children with her, and she is British. And then we also have evidence as well of later kings also marrying into like semi-native dynasties. So they had, all of them were pretty mixed in because you can't just come in. They'll probably find the native aristocracies and join into both of them. So I don't think they were left. I think that when we look at British DNA today, I mean, there's evidence to suggest that only a third of British DNA is Anglo-Saxon. And we don't, also with DNA, we never know when it arrives. So like when people call themselves, I am a Viking, I am descended from the Vikings, I am 100% Viking. No, well, what if your ancestor was an 18th century Swedish person who happened to migrate into the British Isles? We don't have a timestamp on DNA. Like some DNA can be dated because of particular groups, but I do find that hilarious when people are just like, I am a Viking, and I'm just like, well, that's a job description, not a genetic group. It's so what you're saying is, it's like, oh, I'm 100% or I'm 87% accountant. It really sets me off. It's hilarious. So I hope I've answered that. I do think there was a lot more amalgamation than the history books allow for. Um, were brochs on both sides of the border or just the Scottish side? Brochs are a very, very specific thing that you find in Aberdeenshire, in Moray, in Angus, in that area of Scotland. So they don't seem to appear down in southern Scotland, in the borders, to my knowledge. They seem to be a very northern British thing. So what in today's Scotland, the brochs are there. And that's a very, very interesting thing. I would, because they're rebuilding in Caithness, a broch. There's a broch project, which is really cool. Grandpa on fire. Hey, Alex. Yes, good to see you. I'm not entirely sure who Grandpa on Fire is, but it's class having you here. If you want to just drop me a private message on maybe Facebook if you know me personally, and then I know who you are. If you don't want to reveal your real name. Mm. But in Caithness, in Scotland, one second, I'm trying to find this. If you give me one moment. Can't find it. If you can hear that in the background, that's my little one, who is currently knocking on the door to try and get into the office. Sorry, give me one moment. I do apologize about this. It's probably boring viewing for you guys, but I'm trying to find the information. There we go. Sorry about this. Took me a couple of Google searches, but we got there in the end. So we've got this here. I'll share it. This is a Broch project in Scotland, and this is where they are rebuilding a Broch, which is really quite cool. Which, if you don't know where Broch is, it's basically like it's almost a Celtic castle. They are built, they're almost like beehive shaped, and they're stone fortifications, and they seem to be the northeastern Scottish version, or what is modern day Scotland version of a hill fort. They are amazing. So that was the Broch project. I've shared that in the chat. Wonder what my DNA is to visit the Orkney Islands. Beautiful, cold though. Yeah, it can be cold at all places. It's one of the disadvantages of the British Isles at points. And one of the abbeys, St. Barthan's near Duns, Scottish borders. Ah, so they are all over the place. It may be a different evolution. And I think that they are around about the same time, but they're a different construction. So they're slightly different to hill forts. But in the British Isles, one of the things people don't get about the Celtic Britons is that they're not all one ethnicity. It's not all one group. There are different cultures. They're inspired by different things. They have different dialects, languages. They have different influences, trade zones. The British Isles is way more complex than people realize. Um, that's one of the things there. What Roman profession would you have liked to had? Oh, that's a really, really hard one. I probably wouldn't like a military profession. I could do it, but I don't like the idea of killing people. It's a very honest thing to say openly. So, Roman soldier would be a really easy job, to be honest. It's a very, very easy job comparatively. But I think maybe a civil servant. I'd love to have sort of like seen the workings of the empire. Um, Something like that. But I think in the past, the best job in the past is farmer. Just the idea of growing, living in your little farmstead sounds just quite nice, quite idealistic. And maybe I am over romanticizing it, but I like the idea of that. Chungus, the Brochs of Scotland remind me of Sardinian neglyphs, such as the beehive shaped megaliths. I'd have to look into those. I've never come across those. And so I know there's a lot of Sardinian Neolithic and megalithic sort of like structures, so I'll have to have a look into those. I'd have been a Vestal Virgin. Don't sell yourself short, mate. No one needs that amount of drug and alcohol abuse. I don't. I feel for the Vestal Virgins. They had it freaking rough. It's horrible profession to be a prophetess in that period. But that's another one. Easy, Christ, the weight they carried on their marches. Well, yeah, but you get used to it. Like all soldiering is just a case of you get used to the job. What I mean by it is you get all of your stuff supplied. So you get your food supplied, your clothing supplied, everything supplied for you. You don't have to farm. You don't have to like do the hard job of providing for you and your family. Everything is entirely provided for you. It's like really easy, and all you have to do is professional violence. It's a very very easy human lifestyle compared to many others. Like actually being a farmer, you've got risk. What if the crops fail? What if your animals get ill? What if your family gets ill? That's risk. But a soldier's life, you're provided for. You just have to provide on behalf of the state violence. Um, that's why I call it an easier life. Obviously, I'm not selling soldiers down. I'm just saying that, like, obviously they have to fight, they have to do violence, but comparatively, a lot of the stresses of human existence are a lot less than what we would understand today. Because today we can walk to a supermarket and or any shop and we can buy food, or like if you're feeling hungry, you can go into a shop and you can buy just something to survive. Um, I was a soldier for 7 years. Worst bloody mistake I ever made. Yeah, I was in the reserves for 5, so I fully understand what you mean, UAP. Um, get what you're saying. I fully understand. Soldiering isn't an easy life, but a Roman soldier would have a lot more provided for him than a civilian. And he would have medical care, pay, all of that stuff. Ship me off on a Todd to Iraq. Yeah, I can guess. Please don't. No offense meant, by the way. And yeah, I fully understand. Tour of duty in Iraq in the last the conflicts we've had in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've got mates who've been deployed, and I had a mate who was in the logistics in Afghanistan. Freaking hated it. It was the worst thing he ever did in his life. So I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to say, within the context of history, the Roman soldier has a more comfortable existence than his farmer counterpart. I hope that makes sense, and I have caused no offense. Does that make sense? Yeah. But that, yeah, soldier's life in the Roman period is much more provided for, whereas like farming is a lot more attractive to me, because just like the violence of the Roman army, not particularly attractive. Mm. Mhm. I'd rather be a late Bronze Age, early Iron Age farmer than a foot soldier. I'd rather face crops than a barbarian equipped with spears and javelins. The Bronze Age kit is really interesting. Weapons in the Bronze Age are just because we have so many of them from bronze burials are really intriguing, to be honest. Um, but yeah, farming. I think if you can have a peaceful life, a peaceful human life is to be desired in all periods of history. In all periods of history, rather than like a violent existence. But yeah, the Bronze Age does have its own violence as well, and we've got good evidence of Bronze Age violence too. And yeah, I think one of the largest battles in Europe occurs is in the Bronze Age in Germany, though I can't remember off the top of my head what the name of it is. Um, it'll come back to me. Hmm. I see a couple of people have had to go off, but at the same time, it's class chatting to who's here. Uh-huh. Mm, any other questions, by the way? I know I've been quiet for a couple of minutes there, but I was just checking something in the background. But yeah. Mhm. Oh gosh, yeah. The whole point of armor is that it's to protect you in case you get hit. This is one of the things people get wrong so often. They're just like, oh, well, like, if I had armor, I'd be impervious to damage. No, you can still get broken bones. Like, for instance, mail armor, chainmail, is only going to protect you from a certain amount. Like the hits on your body, it only protects you a certain amount. It stops you from getting cut to pieces, but you don't want to get hit too many times. Like no one wants to get hit or shot or anything like that. The armor just provides you an extra benefit if you do. Your shield, if at the end of the battle your shield is blooming matchsticks and broken to pieces, that's good. As long as you're not dead or injured, that's fantastic. Shields can be replaced. Your arm can't. So you allow it to be chopped to pieces. Use that to take blows and you survive. That's the whole point of weapons and armor, is to make sure that you survive and that the shield or something like that, that's disposable. You are the one that's more important. When the Vikings made their first raids, that's what interests me. Now, this is the interesting thing. We always say that the Vikings raided Lindisfarne in 793 AD, and that's the first Viking raid on Britain. But there is evidence for possibly a raid on the south coast, um, where there's a reeve, or like he turns up and the Scandinavians turn up and he says, look, it's not a market day because certain beaches were for trading. So you would turn up to the beach, and when you turned up to the beach, you would then set up shop, and then people would buy and sell stuff. And so the local taxman turns up and goes, "Well, you're on the wrong beach. This is the wrong day," and then they kill him. There's also a possibility for a raid in 792 on Scotland, on the west coast of Scotland, and there may be early raids on Ireland. It's a really interesting one to look at when the early Scandinavians happened, and there's a domino effect there. I'll look at the other questions and I'll come back to that with some of the possibilities for what kicked off the Scandinavian invasions. Has anyone found out how much ground was required to feed a family group, settlement, or crops available at this time? There has been research done on it. I can't remember off the top of my head. Um, the amount of ground needed for a Roman fort is substantial. For a family group, I'd need to research that. That's something I really want to look into. I've heard of curved blades on falcon swords utilized by the Carthaginians, Greeks, and Iberians, would cut into Roman galley helms. That is unfortunately an over-propagated myth. Um, any weapon can, if you do it with enough force, cut through iron and do damage if it's angled correctly, but there were not weapons designed to cut through helmets. It's if you were managed to do it, you could, but it's not it's a History Channel repeated story rather than a proven thing. There are curved weapons that could possibly go through weapons and armor, but that requires you to swing them with a certain amount of force onto a stationary object. So it's unfortunately it is a myth. Very interesting. Where on the south coast? I want to say in Suffolk. Again, it's something. Please check your sources. Check what I'm saying. I may not have got it fully right, but it's something for you to sort of check. Early Viking raids, there is evidence for an earlier raid than Lindisfarne. The theory goes is that what kicked off the Scandinavian raids was a combination of effects. The combination of effects was that they think that the Scandinavians had male preference. Dacian swords cause issues, I heard. That's the same documentary, actually, OAP. I can come to that in a moment, but basically there was a documentary that said that the falx was designed to cut through the Gallic helmet. The reality is the falx and the shorter version of the weapon were farming tools, and the Dacians started using these farming tools in warfare because it's all they had. And when you have a two-handed scythe, it will cause horrendous trauma to a human body. But they were designed initially as farming tools and then pressed into warfare. And so they could cause horrendous damage, but the reinforcement on the Roman helmet at that period is not a direct result of the Dacian War, but an evolution of Roman kit at that time that eventually results in the Niederbiber helmet, and then later on there is another evolution of the Roman helmet through Germanic and Persian influences to result in the what they called the intercessor helmets that you can see in the late Roman period. I saw it on a YouTube short. Yeah, always check your sources. YouTube shorts, unfortunately, are not the best source unless they say where exactly they heard it from. But yeah, I've done some reading into the falx and the Dacian War, but it's a natural evolution of Roman equipment rather than a direct response to the Dacian War that causes the increased armor at that time. Egyptian khopesh for trimming crops. Well, yeah, again, the khopesh is more than likely a hand scythe. These are what these things are, and then they're pressed into warfare when things are more horrendous, because you have like it's like the in the Middle Ages, the English were famous for their billhook. So every nation in Europe had the equivalent of a halberd. So the English was a billhook, and even today, most like B&Q or any hardware store, you can buy a billhook. And they're gardening tools for cutting branches off trees or getting weeds out the ground or stuff like that. They're all together like that. Every Englishman had a billhook in his house. So when you're told by a local law that you're going to go off to fight in France and you don't have, a weapon, what you do is you put your billhook on a longer shaft and it suddenly becomes a weapon. And the English, or you put your billhook onto a spear shaft and it becomes a weapon. And so they would use it, and it's like a tin opener. You use it against an armored knight, or you use it like that. And it was the bill-hooked armed English were very ferocious for that because it does the same effect as an axe or a two-handed axe or something like that. Did the Vikings really use these glass or crystals to navigate? I have heard this. I need to do more reading. I am mildly skeptical, but I don't believe that it's impossible. It's a possibility that they did have that sort of tool to do navigation. To go back to what I said before, the theory what kicked off the Scandinavian Viking invasions and attacks is an interesting one. So there's a theory that the Scandinavians had male preference. So what they did is they exposed their daughters on hillsides and they died. And so you would have lots of male children and not many female children. Then combined with their religion, which was mildly fatalistic, and so, the best heaven you have to die in battle to get to. Again, it's a bit of a tricky one to analyze the sagas and understand if that was the case and if they had another form of heaven. But Valhalla seems to be heavily incentivized. And so you have a fatalistic religion. And then alongside this fatalistic religion, you also have a event in Charlemagne's, so caused by the Holy Roman Emperor Charlemagne when he's converting Saxony. And there's a German town called Paderborn. And at Paderborn, they had a yew tree which had grown to ancient, died, and then a new young, one of its seeds had fallen in the middle. And as it rotted, it had grown a new yew tree through the middle. So this was like seen, and the yew was holy to Odin, and so it was like seen as a holy site. Charlemagne turns up and burns it to the ground, and when he burns it to the ground, this causes. I do apologize, a little bit tired. Um, he burns it to ground. This causes for Scandinavians looking for a revenge attack, and so possibly the assault on Lindisfarne was a revenge attack for Paderborn. Because Lindisfarne was known as the University of Northern Europe. So that's a possibility there. So we think that may have triggered some of the Viking Age, a combination of lots of young men with no marriage opportunities, a fatalistic religion. They had all inheritance was to the eldest child, so all of the later children had no future. So let's say you've had 8 sons, 7 of those sons have no future. They have no marriage opportunities. And alongside that, the religion is fatalistic. You only get into the best heaven through dying in battle. And then finally, you have this sort of this whole thing. Charlemagne paid dearly in the Nuremberg forest. Was it the Nuremberg forest? Nuremberg is, I know it's a Roman defeat, but he was definitely fighting in Saxony. And I don't know if it's Saxony and Nuremberg as well. Again, this is something I learned less about. Charlemagne, I know a lot more about British history, but I can definitely check now. But I know that Charlemagne fought against a guerrilla leader who was a Germanic guerrilla leader and fought heavily against them for a long period of time. And it was quite a brutal and bitter war before he finally converted the Saxons and brought them into his Holy Roman Empire. Very bitter war. Hmm. religiously. Yeah, me too. I mean, one of the interesting things I've heard about recently is that there is no unified Scandinavian religion. So, whereas Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and other religions had religious texts, interestingly enough, the Roman religion didn't necessarily have religious texts like the Bible, the Quran, the Torah. It did have certain things that were set in stone because the Romans loved tradition. So, but they could still change up their religion when they needed to and add in new gods, bring in new events and did additional stuff like that. So that was something that they would do on occasion. But when you look at the burial practice throughout Scandinavia, like it differs from nearly village to village. So there's no unified burial practices, which suggests that there was no unified, forgive the term, kosher religious belief for Scandinavians. And so when you've got no unified religious belief, they may have had tribal gods or like the overarching gods, but belief and faith may have differed from village to village. So, like when we look at the myths and the sagas today, you have to remember they were written down in the 11th century in Iceland by Christian monks. So, what we actually know about, the Scandinavian faith, we always have to look through what's written down, and it's 9 times out of 10 through the actual, what's it called? So, through the lens of Christian scholars. So we almost know nothing about the actual Scandinavian faith. So that's a really interesting one to look into. It's quite an interesting one as well. It's why I sometimes clash with Norse pagans. But at least the Norse pagans know at least 100 times more about their faith than modern day druids. I am sorry, I'm being a little bit naughty there. Apologies to anyone who practices the Celtic Druidism faith. But yeah, the Scandinavian sagas we have are written down in the 11th century in the in Iceland. So we don't know too much about that earlier period. You've all gone quiet. Or were you all listening to story time with Alex? I'll give you a moment. Druids are interesting. Neo-druids have little to do the base and the practices on. Yeah, it's true, and I don't want that to seem like me having a go with the about those people who have those faiths. That's entirely fine for you to have those sort of faiths. Um, you know, I've mentioned before, obviously, I am I'm obviously a Christian, and so like I have a belief obviously in Jesus and God, but at the same time I have no problem like if you want to believe that that's the case. It's just we have a differing opinion about the nature of the universe. Um, but I just look back at the sources, and the sources is when I really go down to Celtic paganism that is in practice today. We know nothing about the Celtic practices and how they practice their religion before the Roman period. We have no idea. We know the name of their gods, but we don't know how they practice things. We have a rough idea of like certain festivals, like Samhain, which was practiced around November, and other things like that, which are sort of related to Halloween, but not really. Um, but like in Norse paganism, we have the sagas, but we don't know how they practice their religion as such. I often say to jokingly, I have a friend of mine who was used to be my accountant, and he was a Norse pagan. And I asked him, "Do you do blots?" Which is where they actually would hang people in trees as sacrifices to Odin, so the year would start again. And we haven't had a blot in Britain for a long time because generally sacrificing people to a god is frowned upon within our system today. And so, as a joke, I would always poke him a bit of fun. I was just like, "How's the blot going?" And he would be like, "Oh, we're working on it." So that's just the thing there. But his belief was that he wanted to practice Norse paganism, and we just had a different, we'd come to different conclusions about the universe based upon our own personal beliefs. And so I respect him, but we have very differing views. Um, so interesting. We have few written sources. The modern pagan Celtic druids, oh boy, very enthusiastic, one might say. They are very enthusiastic, and 10 out of 10 for enthusiasm. Have a gold star. Was Caesar writings true? Did they burn people alive? Again, I think that's possible, but you always have to look at Caesar. And when you look at Caesar, he is writing as propaganda. He is writing back home and he's giving a sexy account of what's going on to the Romans so he can justify his wars. And when he's justifying his wars, he is trying to justify what he's doing. So you always have to understand that when you're looking at Caesar, that's what he's doing. So you can sometimes see things, but Caesar did have friends who were Druids, and Britain was important to the Druids. Like Gaulish Druids went to Britain to train to be Druids. So it seems that Britain was the locus, the central point for the faith, and then the Gaulish Druids came to Britain to study. Like you had to study in Britain to be a proper Druid. So there was something going on in Britain that was more special for the Gaulish Druids when they came here to study. But Caesar is a propagandist who is justifying his wars through basically proving how barbarian and savage they are. But I do think they would have burnt people alive. But he could be misunderstanding something. Like the fighting naked, I've got personal views on that. How do you go about celebrating blots in modern society? Illegally. That's how. Very much illegally. Um, Ryan Gray, it's been a while. Finals are exhausting, but I found time to watch the newest videos, but hopefully in the new days. History exam went pretty well though, 4 left. Good luck, Ryan. I really hope your finals in Germany are going good, and just congratulations again. You're really working hard, so we're really well done to you. I used to be Christian, now I'm spiritual. There's another. Okay. All right, that's interesting. Again, I might not agree with you there, UAP, but at the same UAP David, but please, no bother there. It's not meant as an offence, but we just have differing views on that. Um, I'll be very interested when humanity does meet other life, and it'll be a very interesting event. But I don't think it'll be anytime soon. That's sort of where I'm at. Um, I'm really excited about the colonization of Mars. For all of the weird stuff that Elon Musk comes out with. I do think he is a very interesting character for starting a new Mars colony, and that sort of technology really inspires me because I feel it's like a new step in industrial revolution. Angels are interdimensional beings. Ooh. Again, I couldn't comment on that. I in these videos I try not to talk too much about my own faith because I know it sometimes makes other people uncomfortable. So I don't want to do that. But obviously in some of my videos it comes across. But like obviously I have my own faith. But there is some really interesting stuff there where obviously faith and science and all of that do come together at the same similar point. Um, well, you know, and again, I can't comment on that. I haven't done enough reading. I think one of my catchphrases at the moment is further research required. And so when further research is required, I always have to learn more. There's always more to learn, there's more to learn, and I don't know enough yet. So that's cool. Um, Caesar's propaganda on Germania, he makes it seem like a homogeneous area simply to justify the expansion of the Rhine and the Danube. Again, yes. Again, I think Caesar was really good at that. He knew how to get his illegal wars through the Roman Senate, because even though the Roman Senate was expansionist, xenophobic, horrendously racist, and expansionist, they still saw Caesar as like a horrendous version of it, because he did things. Gosh, Chungus Khan, the Tufana Dene returning, hide the children. Freaking hell. I really hope the Tufana Danan and they're not returning. If I butchered the Irish, I apologise. I know exactly who you're talking about, the fairies. Definitely hide the children if the Tufana Danan are returning, because they are scary. Returning back to Caesar, he knew how to justify illegal wars and he was very populist because suddenly, like, the big problem with the Roman Republic was that, like, and I say this about all democratic and republican systems, or most systems as all. Um, and it's why we always need to check some balances and change the way we get ruled, and we always need to hold our leaders to account. It's a very important thing. Mm. Um, but we need to hold our leaders to account because in the Roman Republic, what happened was the senators had become more and more powerful, more and more wealthy, more and more influential. And rather than using citizens and paying citizens to farm their land so that people had money and were in a good, stable system, they used slaves. So they would, first of all, capture slaves in foreign wars, and then they basically created slave breeding programs where they'd have entire barns full of slaves. And it's horrendous because, like, my personal belief about humanity is that we advance as much as the positive circumstances around us we have. So, like, for instance, a child with good opportunities, good education, encouragement, no matter what social background they're from, they can achieve a huge amount within society. And so, because of that, you have these sort of characters who would breed slaves and then they'd work their lands and they had these massive slave farms and the senators became more and more wealthy and the citizens were forced to move to the urban areas where there was a dole or they would hand out bread and they would give each citizen a dole or a sort of a package of bread so that they could survive. And so more and more citizens flood to the urban areas. They're poor citizens, but they're Roman citizens. They live in the urban areas. They have to rely on charity to survive, and they're living in poorer and poorer climates where they're becoming more and more angry because they can't farm. They haven't got land to have farms. They are not looking after their own families. They're relying on a bread dole, and they're really struggling. And so this is a big problem. And then you suddenly have populists like Caesar who say, like, we're going to break up these massive businesses where there are slave farms who are basically meaning you don't have land, you can't look after your families, you can't farm, you're not looking after, and I'm going to give you land. And so Caesar takes over Gaul and takes all of these poor people from Rome and he gives them land in Gaul, and suddenly they become farmers and they're better. Um, that's the sort of the thing that you can see. And so Caesar offered hope to poor people, to people who didn't have the hope before, but he did it through illegal means. And he was a dictator, and he murdered people, and he committed genocide, and enslaved a third of the Gaulish population, and generally was a war criminal. And today we would look at him with horrendous light because of how horrendous he was. And so when you're looking at stuff like this, you really have to understand it within the context of the day. That the problem is that every system eventually results in power and wealth being like centralized, and then it has to be broken apart and then given to all again, and then over time it always centralizes again because people are clever and they find ways of centralizing power. So it's a system of humanity where we have to break that apart and bring it back together, break it apart, bring it back together. I'm just going to catch up with the chat, by the way, because I know you've all been saying stuff. I really hope that the Tufane Deni left. By the way, Chungus, are you Irish by any chance, Chungus? GOP in the US are bloody scary. They get in power, the democracy dies in the darkness. But I'll save you the politics lol. Does sound horrendous. Right, when the Roman senators grew more and more wealthy, it was a mirror of the image here in the States. Oh, you're in America. The wealth divide is getting awful. I'm waiting for Putin to be taken out. Wishful thinking, perhaps. I don't want to comment on the Ukrainian system. I'm sorry, but I just don't feel I know enough. That war is horrendous, and I feel for the Ukrainians, and I just hope that there is a way of getting peace. But I know a number of Russians who are really lovely people, and I think the Russians are being demonized for their government. And I really just hope for the Russian people because I just know some wonderful, wonderful Russians. And I just feel at the moment that Russians are, as a whole, being demonized for something else. Whereas I look at my own government, I look at the governments in other countries in Europe, and I just think that generally our governments make us look bad for the populations who are generous, kind people, and who I generally think are good people. There are lots of good people in Russia, as there are in Britain, as there are in Germany, and France, and any other country you can mention, USA, and across Africa, China, the rest of the world. And I just wish that, there was a way of doing democracy better, but it seems to be the best system until we can come up with a better one. Um, really amazing how you know this by heart. Don't much our own here. We have no issue with the Russians. Yeah, yeah. Please, again, I don't think any. I'm not saying any of you have issues with the Russians. I'm just saying that because I want people to be aware of where I stand. So I'm not calling anyone out in chat or basically saying to anyone and saying you are saying this. I'm just wanting to say where I'm at. Um, but the thing is, across in the US, you're building your own culture. You're only 300 years old, like as a colony. Like obviously you started as colonists, and then you grew there, and then you amalgamated the natives and all of that stuff. You're figuring yourselves out still. 300 years is no time, and it's turbulent, and the world has been turbulent, and it's a weird time that we live in, where we're in one of the most dangerous situations in human history, and I really hope things become more stable. But I personally am preparing for more difficulties during my lifetime. And that's why I try and do half what I do. And this is why YouTube is an extension of my business, because I can talk to all of you, and hopefully YouTube will eventually pay me for my work. But alongside that as well, I also have, the fact that, some of you support me on Patreon and stuff like that. And this is gradual. I want to try and keep to one of these a month. And this is just an additional work of what I want to do. But I'm putting plans in place to make sure that I look after my family, my friends, people around me, and just see where I go. How old am I? I'm 31 years old, which to some, 20-year-olds would seem ancient, but I still feel very young, and I'm, hoping to live well into my 120s. But I say that as a joke. I have my great grandmother lived to 105, but that's the sort of thing there. I try and be a nice person. I have to admit I do have my moments, but I just do what I can. Have you read Peter Heather's The Fall of Roman Empire by any chance? One of the few books I've read on the topic. I know Heather is supposedly well known. I haven't read it. To be honest, I try and read as many history books as I can, but I read more archaeology books than I read history books. My big problem is time. I think if it's on Audible, I might be able to, but I'll just see what I can do. Ah, most people think. To be honest, in chat, I presume everyone is of an age. I don't want to ever presume someone's age because I just see your names. So when I see your names, I don't really know if you're one age or another age or anything like that. But the simple fact that you're here is nice. But yeah, I'm in my 30s. I've got a little child who's under. Pardon me, I do apologise. I do have a young child who's under 2, and I'm married and obviously live in Newcastle, which, with my business in the northeast of England, makes sense. Newcastle upon Tyne. Hmm. just to say, we've got about 15 minutes left, so just so you have an idea. Aye, so we're all of a similar age. Well, I still say that, someone who's 40 is a closer age to myself, but we're all, it again, if you're younger in chat, no problem. If you're older in chat, no problem. I just like to be chatting to people and getting to know people. I have some dear friends who are in their late 60s, early 70s, and some dear friends who are in their teens. But it's more, I think it's that you learn a lot from lots of people in lots of generations. And the way I think of it is that we're all of one generation if we're living in the same time period together. Um, if December ever comes, don't worry. I'm going to hedge my bets and say the apocalypse isn't just yet. Um, I have so much time. I only work 15 hours a week. Divorced. We were both heroin addicts. She refused to go to rehab. Luckily, we didn't have any kids. I'm really sorry to hear that, UAP David. Um, I did some homeless work here in Newcastle for a while, and I know people who have struggled with drug and alcohol addiction. And like one of my good friends for a while worked in helping people to recover from that, and still works in a charity in the region who works with people in those issues. And there's a couple of charities that I know, for instance, one here in the northeast called Junction 42, and they're amazing. I found that I was getting noticed by the homeless community though when I was tour guiding, so I stepped back from it. But I do try and support where I can, and I really hope that life continues and just stay clean. You're doing amazing. It's really, really hard for people who are in drug and alcohol addiction, and I have family members who work in medicine, and they see it as well. So it's a very hard thing. And I apologize if me drinking wine is any way a trigger to you. I don't know where people are at, and I just hope that people are all right. Hmm. Hmm. So about 10 minutes left on the stream. Yeah, that's terrible. I just cheersed you for overcoming an addiction. Frickin' come on, Alex. I do apologize profusely. That's that was bad on my part, so I apologize. Um, I have to chuckle about that because just it was so bad. Um, so we've got about 10 minutes left on the stream. So if you've got any final questions, we'll do that, and then we'll do a wee wrap up at the end and just go from there. Pitching your pal and whiskey. And whiskey, hilariously, I find whiskey terribly depressing. It depresses me physically, and so I can't enjoy it at all. But that's just that. hmm I'll just give you a chance to type up and stuff. I'm going to watch Netflix and eat some late dinner. Thanks for the chat, guys. Been fun. Safe journeys, UAP David. I hope you have a good fun. Ugh, this is horrible. Tulma. My favorite one would be when I do drink whiskey, which I have to do incredibly infrequently because as soon as I drink it, I found myself like I got depressed instantly, and I had to realize it was actually the whiskey doing it. But the one that I like is Ardbeg, from the sort of the sort of Islay region of Scotland. Simple taste, different from the other alcohol to me. Huh. Night, David. Yeah. So it's for me, it's the I love Ardbeg, which is from like the western part of Scotland. Just the peaty flavour of it, just amazing. But whiskey does depress me, so I have to be very careful when I drink it. I do like port at Christmas time, but do try and keep my alcohol consumption down. Um, but that's just because I constantly have to be out touring, working, all of that stuff. Keep myself in a good shape for work, and that's one of the things there. Mm. And there's 4 of us left. It's been a good chat, actually. I've really enjoyed these. I know that it's just still small numbers, eight or so people most times, but it's nice to see it's different people each time who can make it, who can't, chatting away. Um, uh, Baba June, you're still welcome to a huge extent, and it's just clash just to have people of different ages and points of view and mindsets and all that stuff. Um, just class to have everyone around. I'm not going to read that outside, Chungus. I hope you don't mind. Except for me. No, it's class to have you around, Baba June. I really enjoy your comments. It's nice to chat to you in the comment section of the videos. Like, I love the comment section of the videos because people's opinions, views, all that stuff, it's just class. I love it. It really is a refreshing thing for me, and it keeps me going. Because like it's a long journey and it's frustrating sometimes because you can see other people on YouTube just suddenly exploding because they take the populist view and they take what's popular and they just go with it. But I'm just doing the hard slog because I'm doing stuff that maybe isn't necessarily that popular. What do you know of alcohol in Anglo-Saxon times? Did they really drink ale instead of water, or is that a myth? I think water was still the primary drink. Um, Water was the primary drink there for a long, long time. Ale was definitely around. And there's a big thing about mead. Mead is a type of honey spirit, and it's a type of honey wine, and it's quite a strong flavor. It's very sweet initially, and it has a very bitter aftertaste. And that was seen as a sort of a spiritual sort of drink because you would drink it at the same time as when you were making oaths. So when you made an oath or a promise, you would drink mead. So there was the sweet taste of the joy or the excitement of making an oath to follow a particular king or war leader, and then the bitter aftertaste represented the responsibility. So that was a big drink, mead. That was one of the alcohols we know. Probably ale, but obviously in the past, ale has a very short life because of the fact they don't have modern preservatives. So ale was popular, and alongside that as well, I'm just trying to think as well. Probably, I don't think they had spirits as such, but both sort of beers. Beers were slightly later, but ales were very common, and um, and definitely mead. Mm. Yeah, it is a very nice drink. I remember my stag do. I was given a bottle of mead. My head hurt like nothing the next day. Hmm. So last questions now, because we've just got 4 minutes until we finish. But it's pretty cool. I thought that mead wasn't actually very common back then, but it's good to know that it had a ritualistic uses, oaths. Yeah, so we do seem to see that, and it's also on both sides. So the British drink it and the Anglo-Saxons drink it because it's mentioned in the poem Why Yuggogodden, which is about a British raid from Edinburgh down on Catterick, and it results in tragedy. but they drink mead before they swear an oath to follow the king of the Gogodin into battle. Um, Slante. Slante to you too, Chungus Khan. Um, I'm going to do a wee wrap up, but still put your questions in and I'll try and answer them in the last few minutes. But if you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. I know it's been 2 hours long, but I hope you've learned something. And as always, put something in the comments. I really enjoy these monthly live streams, and I really hope that you'll join us for more live streams in the near future. But as always, just like and subscribe if you haven't already, and share the videos with your friends. And I hope you continue to join us for the future. I'm hoping that YouTube algorithm will sort itself out and we'll see more people watching the videos again, and we'll just see how it goes with the various content that I'm producing in the near future. But thank you so much for your support, and I really do appreciate it. And on a totally mercenary note, if you have enjoyed the video, I do have a Patreon as well, which you can find in the description of most of the videos as well I produce. So I'll get back to the comment section now. I love connecting history to everyday things like drinking mead. Just makes it somehow more special. Always remember, the people in the past are exactly the same as you and me. They just view the world differently. That's the only difference. You know, we today think that somehow because we have mobile phones and all of that, that makes us more unique. But no, we're exactly the same people. We just have a different way of viewing the world. And to be honest, you know, stuff like Facebook and Twitter doesn't prove that we're more intelligent. It actually shows that a lot of people are a lot more daft than we allow to accept. You know, people are exactly the same throughout history. It's just the technology we have access to and how we utilize that technology that separates us from the people in the past. Because everything's the same. Remember, a tweet is a post-it note. A post-it note is just a piece of message scrawled on a piece of paper. And in the past, they would use broken pottery to write notes on and send them to people. And before that, you would have messengers. And then before that, you just had to go and speak to someone. So nothing is new. Everything is just, you know, nothing is new under the sun. It is exactly repeated throughout history over and over again. And we just find different ways of repeating different messages. Which is something I love and I find fascinating all in the same time. I do apologize if I'm slurring my words. Obviously, the glasses of wine are starting to kick in. All good fun. So we're down to our last 40 seconds. So thank you all for joining me. I really appreciate it, and it's been class chatting to you all. I hope you have a lovely rest of your evenings, and as always, thank you so much for your support with the channel. It means no end to me, and I really appreciate that. But what we're going to do is we're going to end bang on the 2 hours because it's satisfying to me. So safe journeys, safe travels, look after yourself, and thank you so much for your time this evening. And I hope you have a wonderful time with your friends and family over the coming weeks and months until we meet again. But see you shortly.